You're listening to CFRU 93.3 FM in Guelph and online at cfru.ca. My name's Alex. I'm your host for this very special hour of programming as we feature a live in-studio performance from Guelph singer-songwriter Innes Wilson, which you can also watch because we're live streaming it on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CFRU radio. So I would like to start by introducing our performer today, because although Innes has been a vital member of the Guelph music scene for many years, newer listeners might not be so familiar with his work, due in part to his unassuming nature, as well as a lengthy hiatus in his musical career. Innes Wilson has been a prolific songwriter, making music in bands and under monikers since '99. So one of his most notable bands, Innes Wilson and his Opposition, which included members that would later go on to form the band Whoopso, released 2 folk rock albums to critical acclaim between 2008 and 2011 on Out of Sound Records, a DIY record label that Innes has helped run since the early days. So then a 6-year hiatus from music, which only recently ended in 2017, marked by the release of his solo EP, Bedford Hills. So Innes is here in the studio to play some of his newer material and answer a few questions, and hopefully we can get to know him a bit better. Innes, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. It's great. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. So I only touched on a few of the many interesting highlights from your career, so I'm hoping we can get into more of those details as we talk today. Starting with some exciting news. You've got a brand new record coming out very soon. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. April, sort of around the same time as Kazoo, but around April 20th, we're releasing my new record. It's some songs that I've had around, and I actually wasn't going to release them, and I had some support from some friends and some people in Out of Sound that said I'd be crazy not to release them. So pretty excited. I'm passionate about these songs, and I've wanted people to hear them, so I just need that little push.
Cool. And what can you tell listeners? Like, we're going to be hearing some of, like, a sampling of that new album very soon. What else can you tell listeners about it? What does it sound like?
Well, it's quite different than Bedford Hills EP, which I released last March. I would say it's more true to what you would see me do when I perform solo, when I perform live. It's really just me, tenor guitar, my voice, and harmonica. It's very stripped down, very honest, very sincere, simple production, and it's just sort of will fit well with the way I'll be playing and performing and touring. Just very similar, yeah.
The songs are beautiful. They seem...
Thank you.
Particularly special because it looks like they were written during a time when you'd taken a step back from music as a profession. Did you know at the time that you would return to music one day, or was this supposed to be an indefinite hiatus? I'm wondering if there was a chance these songs would actually go unreleased.
I think there was. I think I got to a point where I definitely felt that I would not play music at all, and not release music, just because of the demands of what I was doing with my career. And I think I wanted to. There was a lot of desire to release music because I kept writing and I kept recording on weekends or recording on free time, because it's just part of my nature. So I think there was a short period of time where I for sure thought I was never going to return to music, and and then I think I started the desire and the urge to make music outweighed that, and helped me decide to make a decision and sort of change my career path a little bit.
Do you want to tell us a little bit, like, why? What was the reason for your 6-year hiatus?
I don't want to go into too much detail. I've pretty much specialized in the same field since about the year 2000, and I got to a point very high up in a company. I work in agriculture, and I obviously gained a lot of experience over the 16 years that I was there, which ended up helping me find another role in another company, but that gave me more free time in the corporate world, and even especially when you include agriculture, there's the hours depend on the animals, and that was it. So long weekends, stat holidays, long hours, 13, sometimes 17 hours a day. Animals come first, and I'm passionate about caring for animals, and I was passionate about my job, and I was just very lucky that I could move to doing the same type of work, but with a little bit less of a demand on my personal life.
So you'd say that the change in jobs was the reason for your return to music? You had a bit more time?
That helped. But I have a very good friend, Adam Warren, in Halifax, and when I changed jobs, and I started returning text messages and phone calls again, he said, "Why don't you come out? I'm producing, and I'd love to produce some music for you." And I flew out, and we spent just over a week together, and we made Bedford Hills. And that's when I realized, sitting in the studio, playing the piano and playing guitar and singing, and realized I do know how to do this. I remember how to do this, and so Adam Warren helped a lot.
Great. Well, we're thrilled that you were finally able to release these gems. Do you think we could hear one of those songs now?
Sure. I will play a song called "Have a Drag." I wrote it probably quite a while ago. I like it. It's simple, but it tells a story, and a very sort of kind of Guelph-like story for myself and the way we used to live, and having a love that you meet and spend a lovely time with them. So this is the opening song on Northumberland Slums.
Great. So live in studio on CFRU 93.3 FM, online at cfru.ca, and video streaming on our YouTube channel. Here is Innes Wilson performing his song, "Have a Drag."
Is that the old tree where you sat and ate your lunch the day of that summer, watching all the cars race by on the busy highway that you took to get there? Take another drag from your cigarette, and I think the hours left there are like the leaves in the trees just waiting for autumn. was a business meeting. I was still skating back then, but I walked you home and you invited me in. Take another drag from your cigarette, and I sat on the floor of your room with an ashtray and paper mache. The shadows cast by the trinkets you have in the window. Across the ceiling and on the walls, focus your camera and capture them all. Take another drag from your cigarette, and when you lay back down, give me a swig of wine from a coffee cup, and I ask, is the light right tonight? Is the light right tonight?
Was Innes Wilson with a live performance of Have a Drag. That's off his upcoming album, Northumberland Slums. Thanks for that. That was lovely. Sounding great.
Thanks.
Coinciding with the April 20th release of this album, you've got a few shows lined up. Am I right?
Yeah, that's true. I'm as a good friend of mine says, I'm hitting the old dusty and I'm heading out to New Brunswick. I have an opportunity to play Flourish Festival, that's in Fredericton, and I've also been invited to play a Quality Block Party. I don't know if I'm necessarily allowed to announce that just yet. I don't think they've announced that, but
we won't tell anyone.
And then I think we're going to put in a couple extra shows in there. I am going out east with fellow label mates Whoopso, and we're also going to probably do a little bit of recording, maybe at Construction and Destruction's place in New Brunswick. So pretty exciting. It'll be a very busy April for me.
Yeah, because you've also got a show coming up as part of the Kazoo Festival later in April.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm just looking at my info here. It looks like Saturday, April 14th at 4 p.m. You're playing the Red Brick Cafe. Are you hoping to catch any of the other shows at the festival?
Yeah, it's right now it's super overwhelming, but there comes a certain point, I think, when it is Kazoo Fest that you kind of can make your schedule, like how you're going to see this band and then step out and see another band. So right now I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of walking, and then I also will be volunteering as well. So I've got to fit that in too.
Yeah, that always seems to be the way at Kazoo Festival time, is like you can just try to fit in everything that you can, and definitely a lot of walking.
Yeah.
If folks want to check out the lineup as well as those details for Innes Wilson's show, you can go to their website, kazookazoo.ca. Are you going to have any physical copies of the new album at your Kazoo show?
Yeah, I'm going to make a point. It comes out on the 20th, but I'm going to make sure to either have CDs or cassettes available for the kazoo crowd. I'm really excited to be playing kazoo. It's been a long time since I've played a kazoo show, and then to be included or to be invited to the festival after such a long hiatus. I'm just really honored and flattered. So I want to make sure that I have, some physical copies.
So a treat for the audience before the release date. That's cool.
Yeah.
How else can people get a hold of your new record if they're not fortunate enough to be at this Kazoo show in April?
You can get pre-orders right now on either my Bandcamp, which is Innes Wilson, or Out of Sound's Bandcamp is pre-ordering as well. I'll probably throw some cassettes and CDs up so you can order them on Bandcamp. And then on the 20th, it should be available to stream on whatever people prefer, whether it's Spotify or Apple Music.
Nice. I wanted to ask, like, with this long music career that you've had, you've shared the stage opening for artists like the Sadies, Julie Duran, Grimes, Walrus, Timber Tammer, just to name a few. And you've played some major festivals like Halifax Pop Explosion, North by Northeast, and Wavelength. How does it feel? Are you excited to be touring again after being away for so long?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to do it a little differently. The hitting the road is really tough, and you have to make sure that there's a few of those gems in there when you do hit the road, because it can be tough. I know that was one of the things that made taking a hiatus a little easier for me. We had a couple rough tours where we came back in the hole, and I think that's fairly common, but I think it was a little harder to take, so playing festivals and hitting the road, trying to make sure I have those ones to really look forward to, will help kind of make it a more enjoyable experience.
And speaking of enjoyable experiences, do you have any favorite memories from past shows or past tours that you'd want to share with us?
Oh, that's totally caught me off guard with that one. I try to prepare, think of the questions I'm going to be asked. Favorite?
It's a hardball question.
It is a hardball question. I don't know. I remember you mentioned Grimes, which is hilarious because how does Innes Wilson as opposition, like a fuzzy rock band, folk rock band, fit in? But I guess we got hooked up with Arbutus Records, so it was us, another Out of Sound band, and then two Arbutus Records bands, and Grimes was one. And I remember people leaning over to me and saying they didn't like it, and I looked back and said, I think you guys are wrong. I think we're onto something. This is going to be big. And maybe a year later, she's everywhere. So I think that's kind of one of those funny things that happen on the road. I also probably have some other funny stories, but
getting into trouble.
Yeah, you caught me off guard. I haven't prepared that. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting that you had an ear for Grimes and was able to predict her rise in popularity. That's cool. I want to go back to the new record and ask about the album title, Northumberland Slums. Inquiring minds would like to know where the title comes from.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't expect to have so many Guelph people question the title. It's sort of tongue-in-cheek, as a few people have mentioned. Northumberland is a very nice street. I have I sort of maybe think of maybe I'm the slum on the street, or it's sort of more of it's such a nice street there is no slum, or I don't know. It's really just. It's just sort of a little tongue-in-cheek joke, inside joke for myself, and I think maybe sometimes I just felt like I was, in a bad place, especially when I was writing those songs, spending so much time at work and not being able to, express myself artistically. Maybe I just felt like I was in a more of a slump than a slum, but. Yeah, it's more of that.
It does have a nice ring to it, I think, with the juxtaposition between slums and the lovely Northumberland Street here in Guelph.
That's exactly it, yeah.
You touched on this a little bit just now, the recording process. Can you talk about it, what the recording process was like for this album?
Yeah, so pretty much throughout my entire musical career, we've just learned to record things on our own. And I have a studio, and I had this studio set up during my entire hiatus. So if I had those moments or that time, I would just go up and record. And so these are just really just home recorded songs. And they're kind of recorded over a period of time. They weren't just sat down and recorded all in one shot. And I think that shows in the record for sure. There's a good variety of kind of tones and qualities, which I wanted the record to really highlight, that it's kind of a snapshot. Yeah, kind of maybe the songs themselves are the Northumberland slums. I don't know. Like they're the worst thing on the street. I don't know. So they're really just home recorded songs. And when I started toying with the idea of never releasing these, like I said, I had support from Out of Sound, and they said mix them, master them, and release it. So I did that. And Andy McGoffin was kind enough and patient enough to work with my home recorded files from my studio, and he polished them up, and they're listenable now.
So how long would you say it took from the very, I know you said that you sort of went through and picked out songs from this time period. I guess from the very first or the earliest song until the release date, how long would you say that has been?
I think I didn't really want to tell people, like, when you say you're releasing an album, people think of new music, and or at least I tried to, or I've been conditioned that way. So I purposely, like, on the album art, doesn't really say like recorded between this time frame. I would say it's an exact snapshot of the 6-year hiatus. There's probably a song that's 6 years old, and there was a song that was recorded just before Bedford Hills, before I went out to Halifax to record Bedford Hills. So it's basically a song a year, so a favorite song a year that I wrote over that hiatus.
That's cool. The lyrics are often quite poetic and often seem very personal. Can you say, like, what inspires you? If a lot of it comes from personal life or other experiences? There are sometimes I'm a storyteller and I'm just telling a story or something I'm imagining, which I think is kind of a weird way. I know there's a songwriter I really enjoy, a Toronto singer-songwriter that does the same thing and will just kind of create fake worlds. So I think listening to the songs, a listener might think that I'm writing all from personal experience, but they're actually, some are kind of fictional and some are real stories. And what inspires me is I think the sound of the strings, the melody, and where I'm at. So if I'm going through a difficult time, or feeling anxious about something, or enjoying the moment, like that, the pristine, winter mornings when the snow's on everything and nothing's been touched and the light's just glistening, that to me is music, visual music. Mm-hmm. And I try and capture that, or a summer day, just those sorts of things, and then with the people interactions, and that sort of makes the music visually for me, and then I just try and express that. You had mentioned briefly earlier that your other career has been in agriculture. So with songs being inspired from nature, or a nice summer day, for example, do you notice if your two careers ever interconnect when you're writing? Yeah.
There are songs that definitely have specific, at least to me, and no one will really know, situations that tied into, work. I think it was more of like feelings and good feelings and bad feelings more than like maybe a situation literally, but it did influence in working with animals, influences quite a bit on what I sing and how I enjoy nature.
Would you maybe want to play us another song at this point?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to.
All right. What do you got for us? What are you wanting to play?
I'm going to play another one off Northumberland Slums. This will probably be one of the newer songs, since we were talking about how they were kind of recorded over a period of time. This would be one of the newer ones, and could have maybe made it onto Bedford Hills, but it's a little more organic maybe.
All right. And sorry, what's the title of this one?
These Trains Keep Going.
These Trains Keep Going. Great. So again, live in studio on CFRU 93.3 FM, online at cfru.ca, and video streaming on our YouTube channel. Here is Innes Wilson.
Weight of these old wounds and the words upon these winds, sound can travel further. Oh, once it leaves your lips, what did you want to find out deep inside his soul? What did you want to find out deep inside his soul? Looking out, but these trains, they'll keep going. What did you want to find out deep inside his soul? What did you want to find out deep inside his soul? 'Cause love shadows hate, and hate shadows love. Shadows hate, and hate shadows love. Whoa, that's right. What did you want to find out deep inside his soul? You want to find out deep inside his soul. With the weight of these old wounds and the words upon these winds, sound can travel further on once it leaves your lips.
That was Innes Wilson performing live in our studio the song These Trains Keep Going. You can find that on his upcoming album, Northumberland Slums. Thank you again. That's sounding lovely.
No problem. I did put on my harmonica for those people watching at home who are like, why didn't you play it? It's because I did not adjust it.
Oh, so we missed out on some harmonica.
Yeah. And on the album I don't have harmonica, but when I play live I like to add harmonica for a little bit more texture, you know. So it's unique to live performances is the harmonica.
So you're telling us that we'll be able to see and hear that if we're at the kazoo show that you're doing. Again, for folks listening, or if you're just joining us, Innes Wilson will be performing as part of the Kazoo Festival on Saturday, April 14th at Red Brick Cafe at exactly 4 p.m. Maybe not exactly. The new album, it sounds quite different from your 2017 EP Bedford Hills. You'd mentioned like the Northumberland Slums is more like lo-fi bedroom recordings.
Mm-hmm.
Bedford Hills, the very first record that marked your return to music following your hiatus. They sound very different even while sharing one of the same songs. That would be A Familiar Sound.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a new direction for one of the albums? Are you trying a different approach? Or why would you say that there's such a different sound between those two?
Well, like I said, Adam Warren, a good friend of mine, he's a producer. And I know him from touring, both The Opposition and his band, which is called Glory Glory, a great Halifax band. We toured together, and if you know his musical stylings with that band and kind of where they started going in their direction, I would say that when we collaborated together, that's sort of the product of the two bands meeting, or the two songwriters meeting. So it's very much a collaboration, really. Obviously, he's hired to produce, so he had that influence. But we worked together on what we liked and what we were enjoying. And I would say, like, it's poppiness and it's a little bit more uplifting, just lent to sort of, I think, the way we melded together our two songwriting styles.
But it's Northumberland Slums that is a bit more similar, I guess you're saying, to your live performances.
That's correct. Yeah. It's just exactly as you're going to see me. There's a few backup vocals and a bass keyboard in there somewhere, and tambourine and shaker. But it's really true to a live solo performance.
If it's all right, I wanted to ask maybe a bit more about the history of Innes Wilson, because as I mentioned, you've been in music for quite a long time. How did you first get started? How did you first get into it? It was just high school. I think that's how most musicians end up, is high school. There's some sort of influence. And I know the exact moment I walked into art class, and one of my buddies was sitting there and he was playing guitar, and a bunch of people were around watching him, and I leaned over to my other buddy and I said, let's start a band. And that was it. And from that point on, I just continued to learn from friends, travel, and develop. I'd say high school, when I got into music, we played punk, and I think the reason we played punk was it was the easiest to play. You just played fast and loud, and you didn't really have to have too much technique. But by the end of high school, someone played me Leonard Cohen, and I was like, oh, this is what I should be making. This is the music I should be making. So extremely different contrast there within the high school career, but that was it. So hearing Leonard Cohen was sort of your turning point in the genres that you've been into. Yeah, it was maybe Suzanne or Sisters of Mercy. It was just something, and it was the guitar playing and the lyrics telling the story, and describing a world and being so visual spoke to me, and sort of snapped me out of that punk rock. You've had quite a few different projects. I alluded to some of them at the very top of the hour here. How did those other bands and monikers come about? If maybe you could pick a couple that you wanted to talk about before Innes Wilson and his Opposition. Well, I think they're like how most people start bands. You have friends and friends of friends that play instruments, and you end up collaborating. And I sort of started this, I guess, this me and a guitar solo thing. Like I said, when late in high school, when I realized you could play quiet music. But a lot of my bands, I never really focused on the solo side of things. It was kind of more of just a side thing, and I'd make 15 copies of a CD and give it to people. The other bands were just different rock bands. I got a phone call once and saying they needed a bass player to play the Jimmy Jazz
by Friday, and I was the bass player for Tacoma Hell Farm Tragedy for a few years. A great Guelph band. Those guys put up with me for a good while, and near the end, I that's when I actually decided to pursue playing solo officially. So Tacoma was a great learning experience, and that was, I think, my real first taste of proper going to other provinces and further away than just Toronto to play. So the rest of the bands were just funny high school young stuff.
How did Innes Wilson and his Opposition come to be? How did you meet those people, start a band? Good question. So I met Adam and Blake and Clayton Dion after a Hillside, and they lived in another small town. I lived in another. We were completely different small towns, and we meshed. Out of Sound Records was just fledgling then. They had 2 releases under their belt, and I said I would love to help with an indie record label. And so those guys ran Out of Sound, and I jumped on board and never looked back. So when I started playing solo and I started getting some bigger gigs, I wanted a band, and Sturgeon would be around Guelph in the summers back then, and Blake was around, and they jumped in, and that was the Opposition. Adam on bass, Blake on drums, and so it was just friends for a very long time, and it was just logical. We work well together. We a lot of the Out of Sound compilations, we worked together. We all had roles. We just naturally, whether it's a business project or a physical project or a musical project, we just naturally can work together just perfectly. And is the songwriting process when you're in a band like that, is it very different from this solo work that you're doing now after you've returned from your hiatus?
Yeah, when you're in a band, or I think the way I prefer to at least have a band is that everyone contributes. So I may write the lyrics or come up with the guitar part, but the songs evolve with everyone else's input. And so it does change quite a bit. And so I think if you listen to Opposition songs, you can hear which part I wrote and what part, Adam Sturgeon wrote. So it perfectly complemented each other in the pristine acoustic and singing and Adam's vocals and distorted bass. So it's a completely different process. Now, if I hired musicians, I would tell them to play this and play that, and it would be very stilted, I think, and a little less natural.
So now that, as I said, you've returned to music, you're writing music for your solo records. How has it felt coming back after so long away?
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I played my first show live. Last show I played was in 2013. I was invited to go down to London and open up for Walrus. And then in June of last year was my first show since then. So 2013 to 2017, I was terrified. I didn't think I could stand up in front of people and play. I didn't know if I had it in me to do it again. So, but I did it. I pushed through and got it. I still get probably more nervous than I did before once I get my feet a little bit more wet. But it was a big jump, and it was more difficult than I'd like to admit.
So that first show back was just last summer.
Yeah,
if I recall.
Yeah.
You're often described as reclusive. I think that shows up in press releases or the bio that comes with your music. Why do you think that is? Why do people describe you that way?
I think I really pick and choose which shows to go to based on my responsibilities with my career. I also have a lot of hobbies, not just music. And so I think I'm also not the best socialite. So I, if I do go out, I might not necessarily be the chattiest person in the room. So maybe that's where that comes from. I think I kind of associate with it, but I think it's more of a label that other people have attached to me, and I just kind of probably associate it with just not necessarily being out in in the scene as actively as I think most people or other musicians.
So with maybe being a bit of a quieter individual who is selective with the events that you go out to, does it take a lot to get up on stage then? Or is that something that now, like I know you said it's terrifying just being back, but once you're back in the groove, is that something that just, is it pretty easy to do? Or is it, like I'm thinking as maybe myself as a shyer individual, that would take quite a bit for getting up on stage in front of people.
It does take a lot. I think it takes a lot even if you're seasoned or comfortable with it. Things can go wrong, like not having your harmonica in the right spots to play it. And even if you play a lot, you're used to having these little mistakes. Like even if a string breaks, like when we were at Halifax Pop, a lot of people were excited to see us. And I think we got 2 songs in and I broke a string, and just the band had to kind of cover up, and then I was tuning and I think that string broke, and then it was just one of those moments. So I think that's it. Like you're always going to have to think about, maybe you shouldn't think about what's going to go wrong, but it does take a lot for my personality, but I think a lot of people they probably are as worried about the same things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, now that we've talked about nerves and jitters and things when performing, do you want to perform another song for us?
Yeah. Sure. I've got another one from Northumberland Slums I'll play. Won't have harmonica in it though.
Okay, so you've got some adjusting to do. So now that we're almost about ready, which song off Northumberland Slums are you going to be performing for us?
Every Heartbeat Here. This song is an interesting one. I'm not sure how people are going to take it, but it is what it is.
All right. So again, live in studio on CFRU 93.3 FM, online at cfru.ca, and live video streaming on our YouTube channel. Here is Innes Wilson performing his song Every Heartbeat Here.
Person here, and that's where you go quiet. Sound would be welcome, and maybe a few tears, each one with meaning, and every heartbeat here. It's a long drop through the coarse hair on these cheeks, slowly winding the path of a withered heart. My heart is open, my heart is open, my heart is open, my heart is open. How quiet is it in here? How quiet is it in here? There's an uncertain to a tortured heart, and that vicious tone will leave its mark. some things you have now forgot. There is a person here, and that's where you go quiet. The sound will be welcome, maybe a few tears. Each one with meaning, more than every heartbeat here. My heart is open, 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 my heart is open.
It's beautiful. That was Innes Wilson with a live performance of Every Heartbeat Here, and that is another one from his upcoming album, Northumberland Slums. Yeah, that was great.
Thank you.
I think that people should receive that quite well.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not too sure about it because as a folk song, it doesn't really. Maybe I'm I'm just overthinking it, but it's not quite a folk song. It's it was actually the last song that I think we wrote with the Opposition, or I performed with the Opposition, and we actually did perform it at one of our last shows, where we played at the Guelph Little Theatre, and we opened up for the Sadies, and we performed that song. It was so.
Well, it sounded great solo for sure. It definitely works. So for our listeners, Innes Wilson, the album Northumberland Slums will be out April 20th on Out of Sound Records. He's also performing in Guelph April 14th as part of Kazoo Festival. So that's a Saturday at Red Brick Cafe at 4 p.m. So you can check out the lineup and the details at kazookazoo.ca. You mentioned that you've got a tour coming up as well out east.
Yeah.
So I hope that goes well for you, especially as this is the first one after quite a while.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and especially having some rough experiences on the roads too.
I guess like after the tour, what's next for Innes Wilson?
Well, I have another record that I'm working on to follow this up. Believe it or not, I might release it in October, or I might release it in December. And then after that, another record. The record that I'm working on right now is all new material, and the material that I have to record next is all new material. So I guess I've just got a lot to say and a lot to share, and I'm just excited to the songs are kind of just pouring out of me right now.
Well, we're glad that you have a lot to say. We look forward to hearing more from you, and I'm assuming that people can check out that music as it comes out on Bandcamp. Is that right?
Yeah, I will make sure that it's out to college community radio. It will be if you're a fan, just follow me on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and I'll be slowly documenting the process for everything.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming in and for playing some of your songs from this exciting new album, Northumberland Slums. We have a little bit more time. You're welcome to, I would love it if you wanted to play another song. We've also got some of your music, the recorded versions that I'd be happy to play, depending on how you feel. What are you up to?
Well, I think I've got the jitters out now.
All right. Good to hear.
And I didn't get a chance to play the harmonica yet. And I know I kind of sound checked in here with a harmonica, so it would probably be a shame if I didn't play the harmonica, right?
Wonderful, yeah, it would be a shame.
And they should design a harmonica holder that you can take on or off with headphones. Yeah, 'cause that's the problem.
Specific for radio performances.
Yeah.
Great. So I will sign off in just a moment. What song are you going to be performing for us?
Well, this, like you mentioned, this is the song that is featured on both albums, and it's called Familiar Sound. It's about writer's block. It's about making music and no one listening to it. And this is the way I'll perform it is the way it'll be on Northumberland Slums.
Perfect. Okay, so I want to thank you again for coming in, and also say thank you to our operations coordinator, Brian, for setting up for today, and our volunteer, Max, for helping out. My name's Alex. Again, you can catch Innes Wilson at the Kazoo Festival coming up. And we're live in studio on CFRU 93.3 FM, online at cfru.ca, and video streaming on our YouTube channel. So again, here is Innes Wilson performing his song, A Familiar Sound.
To the girls and guys in the band, there's nothing to write, so I carry on and I write these songs. We sing along, sing along, 'cause a perfect song isn't love, but it's a ghost in my mind, and I scour and I cower from the words in my mind. And I look to the shadows in the shapes in the dark, give me a fright, but there's nothing that I haven't sung. We sing along, we sing along, 'cause a perfect song isn't love, but it's a ghost in my mind, and I scour and I cower from the words in my mind. Isn't love, but it's a ghost in my mind, and I scour and I cower from the words in my song. Songs, sing along, sing along. And with these strings wearing out these frets, it's a familiar sound, like the sound of my heart singing aloud. We sing along, sing along, sing along, sing along.
That was Innes Wilson performing live in our studio the song A Familiar Sound, and again, that's from his upcoming album Northumberland Slums. Again, that was lovely. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody working hard on this.
It's been a real pleasure, and we look forward to hearing what's next from you. So I'm sure we'll have you back in the studio again.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. This has been CFRU 93.3 FM in Guelph, online at cfru.ca. And after today's live streaming, you can check out that YouTube video on youtube.com/CFRU Radio.